This is a fan-generated show. If you would like to support us, please go to jamieglazov.com and also don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Good evening. Welcome to the Jamie Glazov Moment. Tonight, Professor Jonathan Brown supports Islamic slavery and rape. Have you heard about this? Probably not, because you see, Professor Jonathan Brown at Georgetown University is teaching his students and making statements, and this is his position, that actually slavery and rape is okay. It's legitimate. It's justified as long as it happens under Islam. And that's because the Quran says it's okay. That's because the Prophet Muhammad engaged in these kind of things and also instructed his followers to do the same. And Muslims are supposed to follow the conduct of the Prophet. And so Islamic slavery and rape are okay. Where were the feminist demonstrations? I'm just curious. I've been also channel surfing. I've been watching Anderson Cooper. I've been watching Don Lemon. I've been watching Rachel Maddow. Nothing to be seen on MSNBC and CNN about Professor Jonathan Brown. Nothing at the New York Times, nothing at the Washington Post. This is very interesting. And I've been reflecting on this week and wanted to share this with you. Ladies and gentlemen, imagine if a professor in academia began to teach that actually slavery in America in the past, when black people were slaves, that this was actually a good thing, that this was to be sanctioned, that this was legitimate, and that he was supporting this and justifying this under certain arguments. Imagine the outcry that would happen over this. It's CNN, again, MSNBC, in the media. And by the way, it would be a legitimate outcry. There would need to be an outcry over something that is so wrong and just absolutely abhorrent to teach. But the double standards are quite interesting here, right? So if there was slavery in the past in terms of where America is involved and white people were involved, we definitely criticize it, as we should. But you see, if Islam, till this day, by the way, has slavery, and there's the practice of rape and, you know, the rape of the kuffars, of the unbelievers, etc., that's okay, and the media never touches it. Very interesting phenomenon. And once again, the left is involved here. And don't wait for any leftist demonstrations. Don't wait for any feminist demonstrations against Professor Jonathan Brown. Very interesting, ladies and gentlemen. And I just wanted to talk about this for 2 minutes with you, because this is what I study. I've been studying this alliance between the left and Islamic supremacism over the years. And since I was 9 years old, I've been studying what the left is all about. And we see all of these hypocrisies and double standards. And they're shameful and they're shameless. And let me just say this, that, you know, I reflect being in academia, for instance, when I was in graduate studies. And all the feminists there, the quote-unquote feminists, their key issues were, you know, there was this big thing, I remember, how capitalism forces women to wear bikinis. And they were very upset about this, how capitalism decapitates women by objectifying them sexually and not giving them a choice but to wear bikinis on the beach. And this is the way that capitalism disempowers women and marginalizes them and forces them into spheres of powerlessness. You know, I remember all this academic jargon, and also, of course, the issue of abortion. And I remember that, you know, many of these feminists that surrounded me those years, women's rights were just them sitting around worrying that, you know, Betty or Susan only had 3 abortions and ideally she should have had 5. And of course, maybe not in that many words, but, you know, we all got the general drift. And this was women's rights, abortion, and the opposition to, of course, the patriarchy's objectification of women's bodies. And I remember there were several times when I would ask them, okay, I'm glad you're for women's rights. We might not completely agree on these particular issues that you're speaking of, but since you're for women's rights, there's actually a little campaign that some of us are starting on behalf of women that are that suffer under the Islamic world, that suffer under Islamic gender apartheid. Would you sign a petition, for instance, against female genital mutilation, against honor killing, against forced marriage, against forced veiling, against acid attacks in the Islamic world. And I remember that even if I would raise this issue, some of them would turn deathly white and start calling me a fascist and a racist, etc., etc. So let's get this straight. So women's rights in academia for so many years, when I was there and I witnessed this on hand right in front of me, it was about, you know, the rights in terms of not to be objectified, in terms of your body, and of course to have as many abortions as you could. This was female emancipation and women's rights. But God forbid to even stand up for millions of little girls, Muslim girls in the Islamic world, that are subjected to having their private parts cut out by broken glass without any anesthetic and maimed for life. If this was happening at the hands of Islam, the quote-unquote feminists would not say a word. And something's happening here, ladies and gentlemen, obviously, and this gets back to Professor Jonathan Brown. And I've been thinking about it, and this is the latest case of it. And if you want to learn about it, you know, because you're not going to learn about it on CNN, look up, you know, Google Professor Jonathan Brown, Islamic slavery and rape, and put in Daniel Greenfield, okay? Because Daniel Greenfield, brilliant, courageous scholar, brilliant, courageous writer, and he writes at The Point at frontpagemag.com, and he has documented this, and you'll learn all about it. And what a shameful, shameless, disgraceful behavior, once again, in terms of the left and leftist feminists who are silent when it comes to the issue of the true and real suffering of millions of women throughout the world. And the issue is that this, you know, the leftist feminism is not really about women's rights. It's not about it at all. Otherwise, they would have something to say in terms of Jonathan Brown. It's about something very different, and it's connected with hatred, it's connected with self-hatred, it's connected with the impulse and desire to destroy one's own capitalist democratic society. I have written about this in my book, United in Hate, and if you want to learn why Jonathan Brown at Georgetown University supports Islamic slavery and rape, and why the left and leftist feminists are completely quiet about it, you know, check out my book, United in Hate, The Left's Romance with Tyranny and Terror, because I explain the mindset of the left in this regard and all of their hypocrisies. Very dark story, ladies and gentlemen, and once again we see how the left betrays all of its supposed principles that we stand for, that it doesn't actually stand for at all. Thank you for joining the Jamie Glazov moment tonight. We'll see you next week. Good night.